My parents were religious, and attended church weekly. I had a deep and abiding faith in God, and drew my strength and light from this belief when all else failed. This faith strengthened, however, when the following account, not an imagined but a real experience, occurred. It was not merely an experience that resulted because the brain was going through a breaking down process in death. Just as one is aware of the difference between the dream state and the awake state, one is aware of the difference between the dream state and the NDE, near-death experience, state. It was painful to write down this NDE since the memory of it was, and continues to be, so vivid. At the time that I related the NDE to my mother and godmother Lynn Arendt, they dismissed it as being merely a dream. Accounts of NDE were not widely published at the time. As a child, I was never exposed to NDE accounts. In October 1978, I laid down feeling lightheaded. My heart had stopped. Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled very swiftly through total blackness to the entrance of a churning tunnel, its walls reflecting the neon blue color that my non-corporeal body was emitting. I still had all of my faculties and feelings. The feeling that I had was that the ties that bound me to the earthly world were cut. A low, steady droning sound filled the narrow passageway, this sound coming not from the walls, but from me. As a profoundly deaf individual, hearing this sound was beautiful, since it brought comfort as would a mother's voice for a child. Strangely enough, although I had no limbs and was flying as would a hummingbird, I was not frightened. I was merely a shimmering light. In reminiscing, because I was in another dimension, it would logically follow that I could not be in the same form. It was as if I had shed the cumbersome earthly body, and was in the natural, free form that was not human. As I continued instinctively through the churning tunnel that moved in all directions, up, down, and side to side. The droning sound from my wings in the manner of a hummingbird being the only sound, a bright shimmering light at the end of the churning tunnel increasingly drowned out the blackness of the tunnel, as well as the neon blue light that the walls were reflecting back to me. Upon the sighting of the light, i.e., energy gestalt, which stirred instinctual feelings in me that I would be at a loss to describe with words, shimmering light beings of deceased family members and friends suddenly appeared on the side of the churning passageway to enthusiastically greet me. Their abundant personalities overflowed in their glowing neon blue and white transparent faces. Communication was by telepathy. Disembodied voices greeted me, stirring my emotions as I was hearing as would a normally hearing person, and I began to see clear floating bubbles in the walls of the dark tunnel that was becoming increasingly bright as I came closer to the shimmering white light at the end of the passageway. The floating bubbles that moved within the wall of the tunnel were in the fashion of three-dimensional windows, or virtual reality screens, and were snapshot moments of my life. Even in death, I did not lose my memories and feelings. Upon seeing the shimmering light that is indescribably beautiful, I had a revelation. This light is not, in the strictest sense, God in the traditional meaning of the Bibles of various religions, including Christianity. This light, which is an energy gestalt, is an aggregation of many multitudes of immortal souls from all walks of life, e.g., plants, mammals, fish, and is collectively a life force. This light is a life force from which all life is originated. It is neither a single entity, for each immortal soul is part of God, nor multiple entities, for each immortal soul is but a part of the collective entity, i.e., this light is in a broad sense a single God who sits on a throne in heaven that rewards or punishes souls. Without this life force, i.e., energy gestalt, there is no life on Earth, or any inhabitable planet in the universe. It is commonly asked, is God dead? Is it not egocentric to believe that man still maintains that God created him in his image and likeness, even though the universe may be brimming with life? That God handed down the commandments for man alone? Those on earth who are in search of God are in vain, because they have already found God, themselves. People need only look into themselves to find a sense of purpose or faith from religion, and therefore find that there is a God, i.e., light, on a throne in heaven who punishes or rewards souls. As I continued my way nearly to the end of the churning tunnel, toward the light which I instinctively knew to be Das Heimatland, I heard a familiar, but disembodied, voice calling out my name from behind me. Perhaps it was the voice of Bricky, my maternal grandmother, who was one of the glowing neon blue and white transparent faces I had briefly seen. Very reluctantly, I stopped, as would a hummingbird maintain a stationary position in mid-flight, to determine who was calling me. No one stopped me, rather, I reluctantly acquiesced to stop. An unseen force, in the form of a shadow, very powerfully and swiftly pulled me back through blurred darkness, to my body. My trip to the transcendent light was in slow motion in comparison with the return trip. As my soul entered the earthly body, which is nothing more than a poor-fitting glove, it vibrated. I was shortly in a state of confusion when I opened my eyes. Although I do not know what the purpose of my life is, I do know that I cannot leave this life until I have completed whatever it is that I am set to do in this life. I suspect that life is a learning process, an evolutive process for the soul. My life, like those of others, is an experience of not only happiness, but also frustration, loneliness, disappointments, isolation, and feelings of inferiority. I suspect that Earth may be a place of education for misguided light energy beings. Because of this NDE, I have had a greater zest for life. I have a stronger conviction of religion. Some view religion as nothing more than a body of ancient codes of laws and social norms created by man to regulate society. However, my opinion is that the most religions of the world do have a few kernels of truth, as most religions share a common thread. I have no fear of death, since death is merely a natural phase of my passing from a physical, albeit cumbersome, body to an immortal energy gestalt, i.e., a shimmering light. I have a greater awareness of the importance of family and friends, because through altruistic endeavors our souls will evolve. It is through our own evolution, or rites of passage, that we help others to evolve.